I'm Jennifer Simmons with AIM. Welcome to the end of the eighth week of the 2021 session of the Indiana General Assembly. We're here today with our CEO, Matt Greller, and the rest of the legislative team, Lindsay Moss, Campbell Ritchie, and Jenna Nepper. Guys, it's a big week because it's the end of the first half of the legislative session, which means bills are now crossing over. They were introduced in one house, heard in committee, will now move over to the other side, or if they were heard in committee and failed, they die. If they were never given a hearing, they die. So Jenna, why don't you give a little bit of a recap of those key bills that we've talked about either in legislative summary or on the video each week that are no longer with us?
Yeah, a couple of the bills that we talked about quite a bit. One was House Bill 1114, Architectural Design Standards. This was the bill that would have preempted local design standards. It moved out of committee, but it was eventually removed from the House third reading calendar. So that language did not move over to the Senate side. And then House Bill 1116 was the piping materials bill, another one we had talked about. This did not get heard in committee, which is good news. And then Senate Bill 42 was the defund the police bill that we were talking about that dealt with municipal budgets. This died on the Senate floor, only I think received 9 or so votes to move forward. So that language is dead for the session. There were some other subdividing land, ordinance violation fees, some of those other bills. There's quite a few that didn't move forward. So I'd recommend checking those out in our bill track list to see where those landed.
All right, great.
And then I think too, a big topic that we've talked about was TIF, and I think Lindsay was going to highlight some of those bills that didn't move forward.
Yeah, there were a couple of TIF bills that were out there. I know we talked about those early on in the session, and we're hopeful that a couple of those would not receive a hearing in committee, and they did not. One was House Bill 1187, which required RDCs to essentially share TIF revenue with overlapping units over a period of time. It was an automatic transfer to overlapping taxing units, and it also had language in there that would have required one of the appointments to redevelopment commissions to be a voting school board member. I know that's been a topic of conversation that's been around for a while, but that bill did not get a hearing. There was another TIF bill, House Bill 1249, which contained essentially an opt-out provision for school corporations, where school corporations would not have their revenue captured in a new TIF area unless they opted in to that provision. So that bill also died in committee. There is one TIF bill that is alive, but actually it contains a positive provision. That's Senate Bill 215, which is being carried by Senator Holman. It allows qualified cities to have a 50-year TIF area for certain mixed-use redevelopment projects. There's a couple of other provisions in Senate Bill 215, but that positive TIF language is contained in that bill also.
Let's continue on then with some of those positives. Looking ahead, what are some of those high priority things, Lindsay, that we're going to be paying attention to, getting involved in the second half of the legislative session?
So there are definitely still a lot of issues that we'll be working on in the second half. Two of them kind of have a similar theme in terms of utility infrastructure out in unincorporated areas, but also kind of the mechanism to bring these areas into cities and towns through annexation. One is Senate Bill 95 that is a multi-year effort by Senator Boots to change the way annexations are done. So it would kind of start from scratch, really, with what an annexation looks like in Indiana. where there would no longer be a remonstrance process for property owners to protest against being brought into a city or town. And instead, the city or town would have to get the signatures of 51% of the people in a proposed annexation territory to agree to come into the city. So that one passed the Senate again, as it has for the past couple of years. It has not been assigned to a committee yet in the House, but we continue to talk to the chairman of the committees. We think that bill is likely to go. Another bill, House Bill 1527, it just passed the House this week, unfortunately, now moves over to the Senate. But this bill would allow, or require rather, county commissioners to approve any use of eminent domain by municipalities outside of their corporate boundaries. So for instance, if a city or town sewer utility needs a new sewer easement for a project and they're forced to use eminent domain to get that easement, those projects would now require the approval of county commissioners.
Okay. Campbell, you had you're going to be tracking the telecom bill. Is that correct?
Yeah. So another bill that is going to be the subject of a lot of work in the second half of session is House Bill 1164, which we've talked about before. This is nominally billed as a way to streamline the permitting and deployment of broadband infrastructure, but it contains a number of concerning provisions. It limits the control over and the fees for which we can charge for infrastructure in the public rights of way that are controlled by the city. And there's a lot of work to be done on that language. Another large concerning part of the bill, it goes with respect to small cell towers. A few years ago, it was allowed for there to be underground utility ordinances that allowed for a local process for siting of small cell towers. This bill would void those ordinances if there's infrastructure in those underground utility areas that's above ground, that's not a light pole, which does call into question a lot of those ordinances and would make those a challenge to do going forward. So there's a lot of work still to do on that bill. It passed narrowly out of the House with only 54 votes. So there's probably some room to work with the authors of that bill to get in a better place where it can get more support. So we'll be working on that in the second half.
Great, thanks, Campbell. All right, so before we close out first half of the legislative session and give everybody a little bit of a break, let's do something a little different. Looking back on the first half, in one word, describe the legislative session thus far. Campbell, you can go first.
Indianapolis. There are a lot of bills that are very focused on the governance of Indianapolis, what they can and can't do, how they have handled the past year. And so that has been a large focus, especially in the Senate. And since most of my time was spent watching the Senate, I got to hear a lot about Indianapolis in the first half of session.
All right, Matt.
Distance. I would say that everything is done at a distance. Lobbying is done at a distance. Interactions are distant. Communication is distant. Makes it very challenging. Certainly, we've talked about it a lot before, but distant would be the word I would use.
All right, Jenna.
So you can tell we didn't rehearse this because Matt just stole my word. But I would say it's been very busy. Lots of bills on a wide variety of issues, as you can tell from these legislative summaries. So I was going to say distance, but busy is also applicable here.
Lindsay.
I would say weird because of the distance.
Spot on.
All right, so we see a theme there. All right, so let's see. Working with the legislature during a pandemic has made me appreciate blank more than ever before. Lindsay?
Wine.
I was thinking that too when I wrote that question. Jenna?
I'm going to go with grassroots advocacy. I know that's 2 words, but it's really been helpful for us. And wine, obviously.
Matt?
I'll be sappy. I will say the AIM legislative team, one entity, not one word, but in a session where we were expecting to have very few issues to track and thought we'd be in and out faster than ever before with only pandemic related items. I think the team here has pivoted very quickly and done an outstanding job so far halfway through. Lots of work left to do, but that'd be my one phrase, I guess, one entity.
Camel.
Microphones. I have the distinct pleasure of watching many, many committee hearings remotely, even in normal times, and the legislators would often not turn on their microphones. But due to the remote nature of this session, they have been way better at turning on their microphones. So that is the one silver lining coming out of the fact that the more things are being done remotely is I get to hear more what they actually say in committee.
Okay, so Matt, before we wrap up, any other observations about the session? I know you mentioned that, you know, we didn't expect a lot of controversy this session. We expected get in, get out, but just talk a little bit about, you know, what you've observed this weird session we've had so far.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, Campbell mentioned it earlier, the focus on Indianapolis, which we often talk about the capital city, of course, but the implications that the legislature's focus on Indianapolis has leaves me a little concerned, I think, about all cities and towns in the state, and if that's going to be a recurring approach, or if this is a blip on the radar. So I think that's something we need to pay very close attention to, as not only we head into the second half of this session, but future sessions down the road. And I said it earlier, I was continue to be surprised at the number of bills. This is much more similar to a regular long session, not one in the middle of a pandemic. So I don't think it's that unusual. We're dealing with so many different issues. I think what is unusual is just that we are dealing with them in the middle of a session during a pandemic, which we weren't maybe expecting. I don't think a lot of people were expecting. So that's a little unusual. But I think one thing to really key on for our members in the second half of session as we head towards spring, and Jenna mentioned this too, is grassroots. So because we are so distant in this session and it's so hard to get FaceTime with legislators and the normal contact we would have, we'll be relying on grassroots work from our membership even more than we have in previous sessions. So look out for text messages, emails, etc., the usual modes of communication from us, asking for you to reach out directly to legislators, sometimes on very short notice, which is the nature of the beast. So I hope you can respond like you have been so far, and we'll be asking you to probably do more of that over the next couple of months.
Yeah, great. All right, thanks everybody. And don't forget, Jenna mentioned it as well, the tracking list at the bottom of your legislative summary. It's going to get a little shorter this week, and hopefully in the weeks ahead as bills fall off our radar. And be sure to read your 5 focus bills here in the legislative summary. And as always, let us know if you have any questions as we enter the second half of the legislative session. Thanks, everyone.